I'm Lena, I'm from Germany, from Baden, and this is my debut in the real chess league. I'm a very strong chess player. I played the German Chess Championship several times, and in my youth I also played the World Youth Chess Championship in Antalya, and this was a very strong tournament of mine. I'm looking forward to the game against Angelika. I know she is a very strong player too. I'm a very aggressive player, and I'm going to catch her in the opening.
Hello, I am Angelika Chessborn. I come from Ukraine. I won bronze in a few youth championships there. Today, I can't wait to face Lena and beat her. I hope she knows that I'm very dangerous during the attacks. I want to qualify for the final and fight there too.
They shake hands, black presses the clock, and the game is off with 1 e4. And with the black piece, Angelika replies as with the French, which is e6. And we see Lena with the white pieces going for c4. Quite the common response against the French defense, but definitely a playable move, of course. And we see that Angelika replies with pawn to c6, trying to fight for this central square on d5. And the final pawn push in the center is d4, taking full control of the center with the white pawns. With the black pieces, we have Angelika, a top player from Ukraine, who even became a bronze champion under the age of 12 and 18. She is a very sharp player who loves to go for attacking chess and tries to go for sharp and open positions. She is also a streamer, and she loves singing and also loves all kinds of animals, which is why she's a vegetarian. And with the black pieces, we have Lena Kuehnel, a strong female player from Germany, participated in youth world championships, and she is a very friendly female player, but if she loses, she will probably not be as nice as she might appear at first, since she's very competitive, trains every day, very ambitious and disciplined player. She's also a tactical and aggressive player, so with these two styles going nicely hand in hand, you hopefully can expect some fireworks on the board here in this game, which is 10 minutes plus 2 seconds per move. And we see indeed Angelika going for this d5 pawn push, so there's a lot of tension here in the center, and we just saw this dark squared bishop pinning the knight on c3, making it unable to move, which means that the center pawn on e4 is currently under attack. So this is something that Lena needs to address in this position. Let's see how she will handle this current threat here of pawn takes e4. Like I said, the knight on c3 is pinned and cannot recapture. She goes for the pawn push, which takes more control of the center, but also leaves the potential d-pawn, and the d5 square could become a strong square for Angelika, who is now thinking about how she wants to develop her pieces. Probably the knight on g8 could move, so she can get ready for a castle. Could also consider some development of the knight on a b8, or maybe a queen move out to put pressure on this knight. Let's see what she chooses here with the black pieces. Seems about ready for a move. And in fact, we see knight to e7. A good developing move, getting ready to centralize the knight and castle short towards the king side. And now Lena's turn about what to develop. Maybe the dark squared bishop, or the knight on g1, the light squared bishop. I think the light squared bishop wants to remain seated for a while, because if the black pawn on d5 eventually captures on c4, you would have liked to recapture this straight away with the bishop from f1 without having to move it first. So maybe a move like bishop e3 or knight f3 are logical. If she's very ambitious, she could consider f4, solidifying the strong center and grabbing space. But in the opening, it's very important to develop all your pieces before pushing too many pawns. And we've already seen a lot of pawn pushes in the opening moves. So I'm expecting a more quieter move like knight f3 or bishop e3 just developing. Also, because of her playing style, Lena tends to think quite long because she has to calculate all these sharp and tactical lines, which she does very well, but this can also cost her some precious time. And currently there is a 10 minutes plus 2 seconds. So with this increment of 2 seconds per move, this will help out a little bit in potential time trouble, but right now we're still in opening stages and we see in fact go knight f3, developing the knight to a good square. Angelika's thinking, considering multiple options. Obviously there's the short castle. Can also develop maybe the knight to b7, d7, or maybe the c5 pawn break, or even b6 are all potential moves. Sometimes in chess that's hard, right? When you have what seems like too many options and you want to find the best one. But with only 10 minutes, you also got to stay practical and just play good moves. And when the possession is really reaching its climax, that's where you want to spend most of your time. But we see Angelika taking her time here of deciding which move she should play. She's ready. She goes for b6. Okay, very interesting choice. Because normally the bishop on c8, the light squared bishop black has, is pretty bad, right? Because of all these pawns on c6, d5, e6, they're all on light squares, taking away potential files for this bishop. But with this pawn move to b6, this will allow this bishop on c8 go all the way out to a6, where it will have a nice active diagonal to fight for. Let's see how Lena responds to this idea. On top of that, b6 could also prepare the c5 push, the pawn push, which will create a lot of tension in the center and a lot of possibilities to sharp tactical play. So let's see how that unfolds. Looking at the clock, we can see that Lena is already down to 6 minutes and 15 seconds, and she just briefly checked the clock as well. Because we're still so early in the game, having spent about like 40% of the time is quite a lot. So she got to go a little bit faster, I think, to avoid time trouble. Let's see. Maybe move the bishop from c1 to e3, or bishop e2. Or maybe a3 to attack this dark squared bishop. These are all decent moves. She's still deciding. And maybe Maybe she's a little bit in dubio what to do here. She reaches for the bishop and goes bishop d2, unpinning this knight. So that's useful. So now the knight on c3 can actually move if it wants to. And it also develops the piece kind of. But then again, d2 is not the very active square for this bishop. But definitely a good move. And I'm going to expect that Angelika with the black pieces would just castle short here pretty fast. But they're both spending quite a bit of time here in the opening, which could really backfire later on in the game if they don't step up their pace. So let's see, why would you not short castle here? The possibility of this long diagonal from b1 to h7 could give Lena a lot of tactical motives. So short castles is the way to go, but it could also be dangerous, right? Because of the diagonal that the light squared bishop has, and this knight jump to g5 followed up with queen h5. There's a lot of potential for the white attack here, and I'm struggling to see where black's play is. I would think that you could also take the pawn on c4, creating this nice outpost, this d5 square for your own knight. But then again, if you capture the pawn right now, that would give Lena the opportunity to recapture. So let's say pawn d5 takes c4, then bishop from f1 will recapture. And this is exactly what we're seeing now. And this is why waiting to develop this bishop was a good idea, because now it hasn't moved and it instantly recaptures this pawn here. So if you count the pieces, it seems that white has 4 minor pieces developed, both bishops and 2 knights, and black only has 2 pieces developed, the knight on e7 and this bishop on b4. On top of that, white also has a space advantage in the center. So I'm really liking Lena's play here, and it seems that Angelika needs to find something active to create counterplay. Because if she don't, then it seems that white will have a very strong initiative. So this d5 square became available, the bishop still needs to develop, the king can castle, and both players are already like close to half their time. 5 minutes 10 seconds for Angelika and 5:26 for Lena. She goes for bishop a6. I really like this move, because like I said earlier, this light squared bishop has a very nice diagonal from b1 to h7. So trading off this dangerous light square bishop could relieve some of the potential threats that Lena could create against the king. And yeah, I think you should just take this piece off the board, right? And then the knight will recapture. Rerouting maybe from the knight a6 can go to c7. And then this knight that is now on the edge of the board will find a very nice square on d5. I think it's time to castle. Let's see. Will we see a short castle by Lena? Quickly responded by a short castle from Angelika. That's definitely what she's looking at. Maybe a3 is still a move as well. Kicking this dark square bishop away, forcing it to take the knight. But then again, I don't really like this dark squared bishop Lena has on d2. All the pawns are on dark squares, so the bishop is not adding too much to the mix with its dark square coverage. Ah, nice. We see knight e4. Very nice, because like I said, this dark square bishop from white wasn't doing all too much, so trading it off seems like a good idea. And now there's a huge threat of knight to d6 check, creating an insane square for this knight and also ruining the possibility to castle short. So this is something that needs to be addressed by Angelika, and we see her reaching for the knight. The knight goes back all the way to c8. A very passive looking move, playing right into the hand of Lena, who likes aggressive and tactical positions, and seems that white has a very nice position here. Superior knights, superior pawns in the center, and after a short castles, no, still no. First rook c1, improving the rook, hitting the pawn on c6. But the thing is, are you really attacking this pawn? If rook takes c6, perhaps Angelika can go queen to d5, hitting both the rook and the knight. Maybe she goes queen d5 right away, stopping all these ideas. Or maybe she castles short, just neglecting this pawn on c6 due to a tactical motive with queen d5, although I'm not sure if it really works. Because there is knight to d6 check. Aha. So you can... Oh, actually no, if you short castle, there's no more knight d6 check. So let's see. Maybe she needs to address this pawn on c6 then. Don't want to go back with your other knight to b8, protecting the pawn, but then both of your knights are at the edge of the board, at the back rank. She goes for queen d5, hitting the knight, which quickly moves back to c3. And both players are having 4 minutes left. 3 minutes 45 seconds for Angelika and 3 minutes 50 for Lena. Is this the moment where we see short castle? Yeah, I think so. Finally, short castles played by white. Quickly responded with short castles by black, putting the kings safe. And rook fd1, and both they're picking up the pace here, which is good. And white still has a lot of activity here. All of white pieces are having a job, are posted on squares that they are decent at. And we see Angelika improving her knight on the edge of the board to b4, intending to put this knight on this nice square d5. So let's see how Lena can create some pressure. She's reaching for the knight. She got knight g5. Knight g5 on itself doesn't do much, but you can play knight e4 then later. But then again, the knight from c3 can also go to e4, which would target the knight on b4. Let's see. 3 minutes. So now she's below on the clock. And Angelika briefly checked the time, so she's aware of the current situation on the clock. 3 minutes is not that much, but the 2 seconds increment per move should be enough to avoid losing on time. She's still thinking here. Like if the knight from c3 goes to e4, hits the knight on b4, there might be knight takes a2. And it can get very tricky there, the knight might get trapped. But in fact she goes for knight g5 straight away. It seems that Angelika was ready for this move. h6, kick the knight, and now the knight centralizes itself to e4, and the black knight centralizes to d5. Which is a great improvement for this black knight. I feel like the position simplified a little bit. The trades are beneficial to black because of this nice square on d5 and the potential weak d4 pawn. But still, white has a lot of possibilities to create an attack here against the king. She goes a3, taking away this b4 square. Maybe preparing a b4 push. She's down to 2 minutes. So Angelika is up a full minute on the clock, which is a significant advantage. Goes for a5, grabbing space and preventing b4. Quickly replied with queen to e2. Getting ready for this queen to infiltrate on the king side, I believe. And will we get something sharp and crazy with Lena redirecting her pieces towards the king side? The added bonus of queen to e2 is that it allows this rook from d1 to, it's called a rook lift. So you go rook up to d3, and then you go to the right side to g3 or h3, and you can add this rook onto the attack. Which I think is something that Lena is looking for. Bringing the pieces towards the king side and going for something sharp. Okay, so the time is almost equal. So Angelika lost the minute's advantage. She checked the clock, she knows. And now the time situation is very similar, and both players only have 2 minutes left. And the position is still going to get very sharp. Rook d8. Putting pressure on this d4 square. Reach for the queen, it goes for queen g4, creating a huge threat of knight takes d5, followed by knight to f6. So the king needs to move to get off this g file to avoid this knight f6 trick. Angelika sees it and sidesteps. And both players are equal on the clock, 2 minutes. We see the rook lift. There's rook d3, adding pieces to the attack. This is looking quite dangerous for black already, and with time running so low, this should favor the attacker. Let's see, what will she do? She's got to move. She's only got 1 minute 35. She reaches for the rook goes back. So she just lost some time shuffling the rook, while white is adding the rook to the attack. This is starting to look better and better for white here. But only basically 90 seconds. Both players need to step up the pace. Like rook g3, create a mate threat. What else could there be? Rook f3 or rook h3? Just get the rook in. She goes for rook g3, creating this mate threat on g7, quickly paired with f5, allowing the queen on d7 to guard this g7 square. We see an en passant quickly recaptured by the knight, and both players are picking up the pace a lot. Knights are traded, rook recaptures. The other knight can jump in now, and it's looking so dangerous for black. The enemy king is exposed, and there's not many defenders. She does in fact go for knight e4. Hitting this rook. Rook has to move. Rook to f5. Scary, scary stuff, because the queen on d7 is so important. It needs to defend this g7 square. Otherwise it's just mate. So let's see what Lena does, but she's really running low on time. She gotta move. She's got to move. 1 minute 27 left for Angelika. Not much time left for Lena, and she goes for the pawn grab on c6. The queen cannot take the rook because of the mate in 1 on g7, but the queen can take this pawn on d4, protecting g7. Let's see what she does. Time is ticking down to her last minute versus 48 seconds. She's got to find something. She's really spending a lot of time here, and she's down below the time of Lena. 40 seconds left. She's got to move. She has got to move. Goes for h5, hitting the queen. Queen has to move as well. Brave move to push your pawns in front of the king. Queen goes to g6. And now she can take this pawn on d4. And now there's a huge threat that black has. Queen to d1 checkmate, which is something that Lena sees now, and she's looks a bit startled. And she's got to move. She's got to parry the mate in one threat. And oh no, she might be surprised by this move, and you can see her shaking her head. She doesn't know what to do, but she's only got 20 seconds left. 15, she has to move now, otherwise it's just over. What a great resource Angelika found here with queen to d4. Creating a mate in one threat and stopping the mate herself. Goes for a check, king goes up, 5 seconds, 4 seconds, 3, 2, only 1 second left. Oh, she just barely manages to play this pawn push, avoiding the back rank mate, but she's got 3 seconds left. Angelika just checks the clock and she knows it. She's got a little bit more, but only 15 seconds. She's got to move. She's got to move. Knight a7, 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second. Oh no, she missed the clock and the time's up, but Angelika doesn't see it and she oh my god, the time is up. Black has won, but she doesn't realize time is up. A knight grabbed. She has no time and it's mate on the board. And even though the time was up, Lena wins. What a game.
Yeah, so it's really crazy game.
Crazy and exciting game, yes. I was afraid in the opening that you will play d5 and it will get a very boring opening, and so it was very nice that you played c6 and d5, and I got much advantage, but I didn't know how to play again. And, yeah.
I felt you had to play at some point a3, that I take your knight, and then your pawn will protect your d4 pawn. Your pawn on d4 was kind of weak, but I just didn't know how to. Maybe I should have played with my knight from d5 somehow, e7 to f5.
Yeah,
that was missed when you were already with all your heavy pieces on the king side. And yeah, at the end I don't know what it was. There was not so much time for both of us, and
later in the game I didn't see that with your queen here and you protect your pawn, so maybe I lost a piece. But
yeah, it was. I mean, there were a lot of moves I could have played, and I really didn't know what to play. I could have also played something like rook. I don't know. I could have. But okay, like rook d5, then you can take with your knight. Then next is check and mate, and
but there was the problem with checkmate.
Yeah,
that's fine. But I didn't understand the knight h7 and knight h7. So
I
didn't understand. It was the rook.
Yeah, but I couldn't take because of the mate, and this knight h7. But otherwise, if I play knight h7 and take.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I could have played knight d6, right? Yeah, I could have played knight d6.
Yeah. Oh, I think so.
Knight d6, and then basically, if you're taking my rook, I take your knight, and then there is some sort of.
You're eager. I think.
Yeah,
would be interesting.
Thank you for the game. Congratulations.